Hi, Minister Yo. Thank you so much for this talk. My friend Sam is here visiting from Singapore, and I grew up there, so we're very happy to have you here at Asia Society. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about the U.S.'s positioning of itself as a protector of human rights in Southeast Asia and Asia as a whole. Ambassador Burns came here a couple weeks ago and spoke a lot about how the U.S. Contradicts itself in relation to China with regards to human rights. ASEAN states, Singapore specifically, how do you see the U.S. in that sense now? Do you think they're being hypocritical? Do you think that their positioning is changing? Would love to hear you elaborate upon this. Thank you.
The US is a bundle. There's a side of the US which is hegemonic, which likely uses force to achieve political aims. I once told an American friend, he was somewhat troubled when I told him that. I said, "You are warlike people. At the drop of a hat, you move military forces," which is true historically. But at the same time, all of us who have spent time in America know how generous the American people are. When my youngest son had leukemia, he was fortunate enough to be treated at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, which is perhaps the biggest charity in America. We didn't have to pay a cent because we didn't have insurance. We didn't want parents to decide on treatment modalities on the basis of cost, because it is a research hospital. And at church, the hat was passed around and a few $100 pressed into my wife's hand, even though we did not need the money. But this is the generosity of ordinary Americans. When we were in Houston, where my wife was treated at MD Anderson, she's a pianist, and at various corners there are pianos, all donated by well-wishers. A little trolley serving coffee, tea, cookies, run by volunteers. This is America. So it is a bundle. There's a part of America which we all love, and there's a part of America which we all fear. And how American society evolves is for Americans to decide. We can't change America, we can't change China, but we watch with anxiety what's happening in this country.
Young gentleman.
Hi, Mr. Yo. My name is Cyril. It's a great honor to hear from you today. In your extended musings, I think musings 3, I think, you talk about a story where because the then Deputy Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Hsien Loong, visited Taiwan, right? The Chinese were a little offended, and to the point that when Lee Kuan Yew passed away, they sent someone of, I guess, not a senior ranking official to Lee Kuan Yew's funeral. My question to you is, over a thorny issue like Taiwan, right? To pick your point, to what extent do we think China will break one day and kind of watch what's happening in Russia and Ukraine and decide one day that peace is best served through strength?
To what extent?
To what extent do you think China is watching the Ukraine situation and saying, eventually military strength is what matters, especially over a topic that is so close to the Chinese heart, over Taiwan?
Every Chinese knows the dynamics of three kingdoms. Many of you would have read The Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And if for the US, the main challenge is China, then the US should move close to Russia and combine with Russia against China. So the fact that the US and Russia have become mortal enemies is a gift to China. Of course, China is very careful to triangulate its position and not be too much in Russia's camp. I think there are about 55-45, with a bit more weight on Russia than on the West. And it's a comfortable position for them to be in. Sometimes they're 60-40, but I think right now 55-45. And if there's a possibility of peace, they'll move towards 52-48. But it'll never be 50-50, because they know that if Russia goes down, all the pressure will be on them. They can't say it, but it's obvious their strategic thinking. Gaza is another gift to China, because these for them are distant wars, and it takes away unwelcome attention by the Americans of them in East Asia. And it'll be prolonged. In the end, some kind of a partition of Ukraine is inevitable, like the partition of the Korean Peninsula. It can go on for decades. There'll be peace. One part will join the EU, like Cyprus, like what happened to Cyprus. But there'll be no peace agreement. And for as long as there's no peace agreement, there'll be continuing antagonism between the West and Russia, which means that the relationship between Russia and China will be close for decades to come. So this is a new phase in history.
Thank you. Certainly the sudden outbreak of the war in Ukraine has almost like thrown a monkey wrench into the global politics and changed the calculations on all sides. And you say that has been, for China, it has given them breathing space in this competition with the United States. Yes, the gentleman on the side to the left. Yes.
Thank you for the talk. So my friends in China have been very well educated friends in China. They're generally fairly pessimistic based on the trend over the last 10 years. So I'm curious about your perspective on China for the next 20 years or so, and also on China-US relationship.
Organically, China will continue to grow because it's still got a lot of slack to take up. Eventually, it has to confront demographic decline and ossification of its system. Ossification in China means corruption, or it's expressed in corruption. It was getting from bad to worse until Xi Jinping took over the leadership. And when he said that unless the problem of corruption was tackled, both China and the Communist Party had no future, people did not believe him. They thought it was just rhetoric. But the manner in which he moved first against public security, the Zhou Yongkang, Lin Zihua group, Po Xilai group, and having resolved that, turned around to clean up the PLA, and more recently the Communist Party Youth League. No one believed he could have done that. So the trend towards greater corruption in China, which we saw during the Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao years, was reversed. And that has given new hope to China. But of course, it also means centralized rule. Many people worry about centralized rule in China, worry about key man risk. The irony is this, that if there is no centralized rule in China, if there are factions, then corruption is inevitable. In China, to get around corruption, you have to centralize. But of course, within that central system, sub-factions are now evolving. So this is the dynamic of Chinese society. Every dynasty goes through this progression. China will eventually, but I don't think in the near future. Right now, they're producing more STEM graduates than the rest of the world combined. They are very hardworking people, very high savers. And in many areas, they are formidable. Yes, at the frontier of science, they can't match America. But what they're now saying is, yes, from 0 to 1, you'll be America. But from 1 to 100, it will be China. Elon Musk has repeatedly hinted about this. He said design is not difficult. The manufacturing is difficult. In other words, to throw up new ideas, perhaps America has the most fertile ground. But to carry it to fruition across time and space, China may have an advantage in certain industries, India and others. So yes, I know right now there's pessimism in China because of the pricking of the real estate bubble, youth unemployment, a sense that the bureaucracy has become rigid because everyone is afraid. A friend of mine said, when I was at a meeting in Beijing, he said the Beijing is very tense. My reply to him was, since when was the imperial capital not tense? But this is China. And this drama we cannot affect. And it's very difficult for individual Chinese to affect that drama.